Hello, everyone. I'm here with Karl Emmrich. Emmerich? Did I
Don't worry
screw?
about it.
All right. Yeah. So he is a YouTuber as well. He reviews books, fantasy books, politics, left politics usually. And yeah, we were talking on Twitter about doing a collaboration review of this Michael Brooks book, Against the Web, a cosmopolitan answer to the new right. And yeah, so we both read the book recently. Michael Brooks obviously passed away 2 months ago, for those of you who don't know. And he was also a YouTuber. And yes, he has a lot of works. But yeah, what did you think of the book, Karl?
It was very much a book that I felt like was written by Michael. You know what I mean? Like it was so like encapsulated like the kind of figure he was. Like in like one paragraph he'd be like making fun of Dave Rubin, and then in like the next paragraph he's talking about like the Russian Revolution. And it's just like just the way that he would synthesize like comedy with like this deep like historical understanding. It was just like his show, and it was just like I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, it was definitely a lot like his show. Like just going after right wingers basically, or like, centrists who just take right wing positions or whatever. And yeah, and like talking about like the way forward. But yeah, I thought the same thing. I'm like, there's no way this was ghost written by someone or anything. Um,
No, exactly. Well, and I feel like, well, what do you think about the length? Like, do you like that it's like a little shorter, or do you wish that it was longer?
I feel like it definitely could have been longer. Yeah, it's only however many pages, 82.
It's
Uh,
so short.
yeah, it is short. I do wish there could have been more, but obviously there's like a lot of videos of him in the archives on his channel and stuff. But yeah, it could have been longer, obviously.
No, I know that on his show one time, like someone critiqued the length of it, and he said something about how he was trying to keep. There's like this tradition of like shorter leftist reading, and like obviously there's like the Communist Manifesto, but I don't know what else he was referencing with that. I can't think of another like book that's like quite as short. I mean, it is tiny. It is so
Yes.
so it was just, but I definitely wish I had been longer. But with that being said, I feel like he says a lot more in 80 pages than some people say in 500. You know what I mean? It's
Yes.
very information dense. So
It is dense for sure. He gets to his points, no like nonsense really. I know Ben Burgess's book, which he references a few times in here, is short as well. Like it might
oh,
be
I
like
need to
100
get that
pages.
one.
Yeah, I haven't read it either. But what I also noticed is he always references, other people in this space. It's a lot like his show where he'll have on anyone basically, and yeah, I actually have his channel too because I just pulled it up and I was looking at it, and I just couldn't help but notice like all his videos basically are like featuring ContraPoints or featuring like Anna Kasparian or
Oh yeah.
like Richard Wolff or any of these people, Noam Chomsky, and he was probably like the best collaborator and at bringing people together and stuff.
Oh, I completely agree. He was very much like an uplift other left-wing voices kind of person, which I feel like definitely like bleeds through into the pages of the book. So I really enjoyed that. And I felt like I remember like when he was talking about on his show that he was writing a book, and he said he was going to write it about the dark web or like the IDW or whatever. And it was just like, at a certain point you're like, oh really? Like, they're not really like super relevant anymore. And he like even acknowledged that. And I almost was like, oh, I feel bad that that's the topic he picked for his book. But then like after reading it, I feel like he did such a good job of kind of extrapolating like those figures into how they work into like the larger historical lens. You know what I mean? Like that these
Mhm.
kind of figures have existed throughout time. Like we're going to see a Sam Harris again. It's not going to be the exact same like depiction of him, but we're going to see someone like Sam Harris, like Dave Rubin, or like, not really Dave Rubin, but like Jordan Peterson, like Ben Shapiro. So I enjoyed that.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Which chapter did you enjoy the most of like the IDW figures?
I think that his chapter talking about I liked the stuff with Harris. Probably I found that the most interesting. I don't know. All of it was like, I mean, it's definitely, if you watch his show, you definitely will feel a little bit like it's ground that has been tread before. You know what I mean?
Yes.
A lot of his
Yeah.
critiques. I mean, like I was actually very surprised when we got to the Sam Harris chapter and it started talking about like the In Defense of Torture, like that article that Harris wrote. And so I was like, okay, I've definitely, but I feel like it is nice to have it like put in this concise way. So I enjoyed that part. What about
Yeah.
you?
Yeah, I like the Sam Harris part as well because, like, I wasn't as politically active in the mid 2000s, and him him contextualizing like Harris's pro-war stance, or like not pro-war, but like theoretically thought experiment pro-war
I know,
positions
right?
or whatever. um, and like I feel like he added more to that chapter than any of the other chapters probably too. And he talked about like the history of thought experiments and why Sam Harris isn't really using like an actual
Exactly.
thought experiment. He's just like I don't know. He's like
He's just saying
talking
things that
about
he kind
real
of thinks should be
things.
done. Like he's
Yes, yeah.
well, I also like the way that in this Harris chapter, I feel like he did a lot of like actual citations of like actual words that Harris
Oh
uses because
yes.
like I mean that's Sam Harris's big thing. It's like, oh, I've been taken out of context. I've been taken, and so it's like Michael Brooks basically put large chunks of his actual text in there, and it's just like I mean at a certain point, it's like you're not being taken out of context. People just disagree with you, and I feel like Brooks did like a really good job of like kind of synthesizing all that. He did that with Shapiro too, because Shapiro has that whole like list of like dumb things I said, and so you're not allowed to criticize me for it. And then it's just like, but I still hold all the same beliefs. I just say it slightly nicer now.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, and he's funny when he talks about it too. He's like Shapiro conveniently put all his dumbest beliefs in one position. uh,
Well, then I'd say the Harris chapter was probably my favorite of the IDW figures. But the last chapter, I also really like that because that's the other
that
thing I
was
like.
important. Yeah.
I feel like Michael was always so like nuanced with the way he talks about things. You know what I mean? He was
Hmm.
never just like this like black or white figure when he came to like talking about even people that he didn't like. You know what I mean? I feel like he always like kept a certain degree of nuance, and like that last chapter, I felt like was like such a good like way to look forward, and he always just had like a bigger vision for like where I feel like he wanted like politics to go. And I feel like he's like the only person that could like unironically say like, oh, we need to care about like the human race, you know what I mean? And it
Mm.
actually doesn't seem like cringy, like you're just trying to like obfuscate from like broader like stuff. Like he would bring up stuff like that, and it's just like, oh, he's actually saying that and means it, you know?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, he was very genuine with all that stuff, and that came through the most in chapter 5. I definitely agree. Um, yeah, chapter 5 was definitely the best summation of his work. How do you think this would come across to someone who hasn't seen Michael Brooks's show though?
Okay, that's actually exactly what I was thinking when I was reading it, is because like it's so short, and so it's like, oh, this could be a good, going into it, I'm like, this might be a good one to recommend to people. But reading it, there's just so many references to his show and honestly just other figures that I'm like, if you're not like super aware of like the people he's talking about, I don't know. I was worried it could be confusing. What was your thoughts on
Yeah, I thought he name dropped like a ton of people, which
that?
is
Yeah.
especially in the last chapter. And like I knew who he was talking about for the most part, because like it's great on his show to have people on, so you get their actual points of view and stuff. But then he kind of just touches on people's points of view a little quickly,
Yeah.
and then moves on almost to like another person.
No, I agree. And but like also like the more I was thinking about it, I was like, that's also kind of his style with his
That
show.
was his
Like
style.
he'll bring up like some like obscure thing about like the politics in like Jamaica and say it like that's not something that like most people don't know about. Like he would just like bring up something and then you'll just, and so I feel like that's kind of how it was in the book. And it's like, I mean, it works in the show. So maybe like people wouldn't feel like it was super name droppy, but I don't know. Like I feel like the way he talks about things, which I like, but he just would always like bring up things that like I'm like, wow, I didn't even know about that before. But he says it like, oh yeah, like everybody knows about that.
Yeah, he definitely like doesn't talk down to his readers because
Yeah.
he's bringing up like very historical things, and like things like the Black Jacobins I haven't really read about in Haiti, or when he even like South Africa, which everyone knows who Nelson Mandela is, but I don't have like a great historical understanding of the ANC or anything.
I tell you, reading the last chapter of his book, I got my own like TBR and everything.
Yeah.
I was like, I have to start the Long
Yeah.
Walk to Freedom, Nelson Mandela's autobiography. I was like, he just like the way that he talks about these figures, you're like, oh my, I want to learn more about it. And just the way that he closed off that last chapter, like talking about the ANC and like the Freedom Charter and everything. I was like, I need to learn more into that. I need to dive deeper into that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and there's like, yeah, he was probably the best left person to recommend readings, I think, of anyone, because most people recommend the same thing over and over, and like even like right, left, center. Like there, I remember there was a Jon Stewart thing when Romney was running for president about him recommending the same book that he was like currently reading for like over a year or something.
That's pretty funny, actually.
Yeah, but Brooks, like it seemed like he was always like reading something, and he's like, all right, live stream today, I just read 3 books and we're going to talk about them and contextualize it with what's going on and stuff.
Oh yeah, I completely agree. I mean, even like people that like, I also like enjoy, like I like Kyle Kalinske, like I'm a fan of him,
Yeah.
like I think he's good at like persuasion. But like I'm like pretty confident. Like one of the only like real like leftist books he like reads is like Manufacturing Consent. Like he read that, but it's like beyond that. Like that's like the only one he ever brings up. And like I'm sure he's read like other leftist books, but it was like Michael Brooks, it's like he'd read like all of it. You know what I mean? He'd read the whole archive of everything, and it just like I always really appreciated that about him as someone who likes to read like as much as
Yes.
and
Yeah.
I'm sure you also feel the same way.
Yeah, definitely. Anything else you wanted to talk about from in here?
Well, we didn't really talk about Peterson and like
Peterson.
kind of his critiques of Peterson, because like I like that like it was like a different critique for each figure. You know what I mean? With
Yeah.
Harris, it's just kind of like the guy that like honestly he is like a little liberal when it comes to like domestic stuff, but just like a total neocon when it comes to stuff. And with Peterson, it's like he brings up this like this idea that like the hierarchies are natural, you know what I mean? And I feel like that is like such a like I just like the fact that he was able to pull that out of Peterson. He was able to separate like Peterson from that like idea, and that idea, there's always going to be people that make that argument that like where we are today, that is how it's supposed to be, that is just naturally how you're going to find it. And with it's pointed out to absurdity with Peterson, because Peterson always talks about like lobsters and stuff, but it's like just that notion that like because of there's hierarchies in nature, that like every hierarchy in our world is like justified. And I feel like he does a good job of like explaining that one. And the same thing with Shapiro. Like I liked how he took like how Shapiro tried to use like historical examples of like pretty frequently, but it's like he does it in a way that like mythologizes them, and then is then not historical in his analysis. You know what I mean? Like I just love that like Michael Brooks always tried to put things through his historical lens.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. He was great at that. Yeah, because he like immediately with Peterson, he's like quoting Peterson justifying hierarchy, and then he's like, this argument could be used to justify literally any hierarchy at any point in time or whatever, like past, present, or future. And then he uses like the slave like plantation owner and slave like hierarchy justification that people used in that time. um yeah.
No,
Yeah.
and it's the exact same arguments too. I mean, because Peterson constantly like cites the Bible and everything, and that's
Yeah.
literally the citation that people use to justify slavery at the time. So it's just like, I mean, those same trends you see over and over, and you're gonna see it again. Like Peterson's basically fallen off as like a prominent figure, but like there's gonna be another Peterson.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder. Like he's like sick or what? I don't actually know what's going on with him. Like
Yeah, he definitely
today.
has some stuff going on.
Um, but yeah,
Shapiro is really the only one that hasn't fallen off of the group. I feel like he's stayed like, I mean, he's still, I mean, what is he? He's like the number one news source on Facebook. Isn't that his
yeah,
thing now? Yeah, exactly.
yep,
He's like definitely like, there are people that watch him. And I feel like, but Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson, I feel like are less talked about today.
yeah. Shapiro, everyone's dunking on now. Like there's TikToks that people are showing me. I'm not even like on TikTok, but they're like, oh, here's like Ben Shapiro talking about WAP or whatever, and or I'm sure you saw the him like quoting Cardi B or whatever, like
Oh
his
yeah.
quoting rap segments are like super cringy. And his sister is, or sister I think, is like on my ads for Facebook daily.
Oh,
It's
that's
just
weird. Okay. I didn't know that part.
yeah, like, or like I don't know, like on YouTube, it's like always the YouTube ad now.
Yeah.
And there's just like this sort of they all get money basically to keep their shows going and expand their shows and stuff. So all of these people can get out to just a ton of people, and like just expand their audiences to be bigger than like the New York Times or CNN in Ben Shapiro's case.
Oh yeah.
So
Well, and also I feel like the problem with Shapiro is he's become so much more insulated with like his message, because before, he would sometimes debate people. I know he debated Cenk Uygur and everything, but like since that BBC interview he did where he just like embarrassed himself by not being able to like, defend his arguments, he like doesn't like do, I feel like he doesn't do stuff like that anymore, which is like good to the extent that, he's on less outlets now, but like he basically, his message is just purely through the show that he does. And because of that, there's like less people that are like being able to confront him about his ideas. So I feel like it's it's a catch-22 on that one, because he doesn't make public appearances anymore, which is like good, but he also like is insulated and is able to get his message out there.
yeah, that's good. Yeah, and I know Sam Harris is like still doing his podcast and stuff, and I feel like he hasn't appeared very many places in the mainstream, at least, certainly. I wonder when the last time he was on Bill Maher or anything like that.
Oh, I feel like it's been a while for that one. Well,
Yeah.
they're only brought up briefly, but what are your thoughts on like the Weinstein brothers and like their kind of relationship to all of this? Because I've always thought that they were like a little interesting. Like obviously, like they're pretty silly in some of the things that they say, but they're always interesting because like they actually, even more than Harris, claim to be like kind of on the left. You know what I mean? Like, what's
Yeah.
your kind of take on them?
Yeah. So like Brooks before he passed, and like Sam Cedar, and everyone involved with Brooks's show and stuff, basically thought um, Eric Weinstein or Brett Weinstein, one of them was just trying to become Dave Rubin.
I think is Eric Weinstein. I think that's the one they said is trying to become the next Dave Rubin. I think.
Yes. Yeah. So like he's got his own like Rubin-esque show where he doesn't really talk about things, or like he talks about like the left or some like very niche, canceling or something, which is kind of like what Brooks does, but like Brooks obviously talks about cancel culture negatively and like has like he actually like reads and stuff about things, and like he'll
Actually,
talk about other
understands
things
other
sometimes.
things.
Yeah, it's not just like something on a college campus happened, therefore I'm going to dedicate my entire show to it or whatever.
No, I completely agree. And I mean that's the problem with those guys in general. I mean, it's the same thing with like, I mean, Brett Weinstein and Eric Weinstein a little bit. It's like, their main critique of the left is, oh, that there's cancel culture. And then they never talk about anything else. They never talk about single payer. They never talk about like any other like sort of like public spending or anything. Like they only ever talk about cancel culture. And if you really think that that is like the biggest issue, I feel like you're not paying attention. But that these guys think it's a big, and I get it a little bit with Brett Weinstein. I mean, he did lose his job like because of it, kind of, but like it's still like, I mean, you got to be able to read the room better than that, I feel like.
Yeah. Well, I think they might argue, or like they might actually be reading the room though, because there's a huge audience for them.
That okay, you're right. You're right in that way. I definitely get what you're saying. I guess I wish they were more principled then, because that's all the other problem. They're all about like, oh, we need to exchange ideas and everything, but none of them will debate Sam Cedar, and which
Yeah.
is
Or like anyone, basically.
or anyone.
Yeah. It's like, wow, the only people who talk to me are like these right people, but the only people I criticize are left people. Like, I wonder why that is. Um, yeah, and they don't like ever complain about like anyone on the right either. So it's just frustrating. Like even when they're anti-free speech on the same issues, they won't be like call it out or whatever.
Oh yeah. Well, and when you take like what is their main idea, and this isn't just the Weinstein brothers either. This is, Peterson, freaking Harris, everything. Like how much they want to talk about how like, oh, we have to like have this exchange of ideas. I don't think any of them, besides of when Peterson talked to Zizek, I don't think any of them have ever talked to like a socialist. You know what I mean? Like I don't like, and like with how much they talk about how like, oh, we need to like put these ideas out there. Like they never actually like have any sort of dialogue with people on the left. You know what I mean? And I'm not even like a socialist, but I still think like if you're gonna say that you like care about the exchange of ideas, you're gonna talk to people who disagree with you and not just a bunch of people who think cancel culture is bad.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and Brooks goes through like all their different ways of like dodging things, kind of too. Like Sam Harris is like, "Well, that's unfair. You're taking me out of context," and like, and Ruben's like, well, he doesn't really talk about Ruben too much, but and actually, I mean, he talks about Shapiro, but Shapiro doesn't at that point wasn't really dodging things too much like he is now.
Yeah, I mean, Shapiro definitely does try to dodge things. He just likes to
Now he
dodge
does.
what he feels like isn't fair phrasing of his words. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
even if it's something he believes, he still doesn't like. He just does. He still tries to dodge things, though.
Hmm. Yeah, or he tried him and like Steven Crowder as well try to just get like the least informed people to dunk on or whatever, or like they'll find like people at like a college campus or something and just debate them instead of debating like a real person who's dedicated their career to like talking about like Islam or whatever.
Well, no.
um
Well, Crowder is even more infuriating because he does it with this persona, like, oh, I'm going in the deep end. I'm going to go to a college campus and I'm going to talk to someone that's in between. Like, there have been multiple times in his little change my mind things where the person has to leave because they're on their way to class. It's like these are not people who like were prepared to discuss or
yeah.
anything, and so it's just like he won't debate like someone who actually has 10 minutes to prepare, let alone someone who knows what they're talking about. You know.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. Well, I will let you go, but thank you for joining me. We'll definitely have to do this again. You can plug whatever you want to plug, I guess.
All right, yeah, thanks for having me on, man. This was a good time. Yeah, just look up my name, Karl Emmrich on YouTube. You'll find my channel. I post
Yeah.
very similar content to what Gregory does, but and yeah, this was a really good time.
All right. Yep. And I will link it in the description. And yeah, thanks for watching, everyone. See ya.
See ya.